Welcome into Rover Sports and Slaughterhouse Sports. My name is SportsDoc. I'm here with Spencer G, and we're talking about college football. As you recall, Spencer, college football has been rocked the last few years by complete chaos, Wild West, transfer portal, NIL money. College players have always been paid, let's be honest. But it was always under the table, as they say. But now it's out in the open. And they've taken it one step further in the offseason. There is a landmark court case by the Supreme Court here in the United States suggesting that colleges can actually pay athletes directly with the provision that the pay is commensurate with their actual talent so that their name, image, and likeness is worthy of the payment. Could you, and there's one case now, Texas Tech. The first guy in is not a small person. He's 6'6", 360 pounds. As I said, not small.
Right.
Tell us about him and let's talk about the deal so that the audience can hear about the framework for the new way of paying college athletes.
Well, the guy at Texas Tech, Felix Ojo, he's a player that I believe like the deal is a modernized deal where it's 3 years and it's going to be about $5 million per year. And that could incentivize the athlete by giving them kind of this contract to be able to stay at the colleges. Now, this is still so new, and I would like to see these players actually, if they actually become employees, that's a faster way to get them to contract. So I do, as a college football fan, I want to see these guys stay at their colleges for multiple years. But also I want them on the front end, and this is where I might differ from people. I'd like to see them make a lot of money on the front end. And also maybe there could be, just like in pro sports, maybe there could be situations where if a player does well, there's incentives to the contract. Like if they're first team all SEC or first team all Big Ten, maybe they'll end up making some money. What really is newsworthy is that there's going to be a third party that says basically, oh, if this one college wants to come in and say that there's a player at Mississippi State and say that the Ohio State, for example, wants to pay a Mississippi State wide receiver to leave, and they're going to pay the wide receiver like $8 million, even though that wide receiver hasn't played much football and doesn't have much of a social media following, then this third-party market might strike down that sort of deal. Now, that I do kind of feel for the player in that instance. He's not going to be making the money. But as a college football fan, I would like these players to stay at their schools, even in Mississippi State, for like a 2 or 3 year span.
So I agree. I think it's good that contracts are given a fixed amount of time. The more stability you have with the players, that is, if you're what I care about, just let's back up from all this stuff. What I care about is the game of college football. I like the stability of it, the idea that everybody's a free agent and everybody's jumping in the portal creates all kinds of problems. And I'll name two of them. One is nobody wants to coach these players if they know that they're just going to jump in the portal to get another dollar from another team. So if there's some stability, when you actually sign a contract, like any other contract in law, they hold you to the contract, right?
Right.
You say, I'm making $5 million for 3 years, and you're going to Texas Tech, well, that's the deal, all right? And also the transfer portal. I think that they need to limit the amount of time. So once you have a team that's together for spring football, that you can't transfer till after the season.
There should be no second portal at all.
So I agree with that.
After the spring, there should be no portal. The only portal that should occur, Bruce, is after the college football playoffs. In fact, there was a Penn State backup quarterback, Bo Pribula. He's now playing at Missouri. And it was kind of a tragic situation because this backup at Penn State, he wanted to play for the college football playoffs as a backup quarterback, but since the portal was open, all of the quarterback, we could say all the quarterback musical chairs, or we could say there's a special word for that, like the carousel. That's the word for
quarterback
it.
Carousel.
Quarterback carousel. All the spots were getting taken, so he had to ditch his team, and potentially Penn State, if Drew Aller went down, Bo Pribula would have not been there. But if Bo stayed till the end of the year, all the other major colleges might have filled in their spot. the portal needs to be after the season is over, after every game is complete, and that's the way it should be. You can't have free agency during the middle of the playoffs.
I agree with that. Now, there is an agency, I believe, we spoke in pre-production. There's one group that's supposed to be the arbiter of justice. That is the group that says this deal is out of line with the market conditions. We discussed that. Maybe just touch upon that a little bit.
And Bruce, I believe that first of all, I believe that this will be very hard to execute. Because say that I'm a coach and say that I am looking to pay say that I'm Louisville and I'm looking to get this kid, instead of having him go to Notre Dame or USC, I'm Louisville, and I want to spend an extra $2 million on this player. Okay, and I'm like, this player has great potential, all right? But you guys at Deloitte, I think the company's Deloitte, you guys don't know the game of football. You don't see how impactful this player is. Like, I'm curious about Deloitte being the third party. How are they going to come up with the appropriate market value for a player? There might even be a player, Bruce, that plays with a terrible quarterback, and that player is winning every route on tape, on film. He's winning every single route. But Deloitte can just say this receiver only had 5 touchdowns, but he played with a terrible quarterback. So how can you ever properly capture how much an athlete is worth? What happens if there's an Arch Manning? He's a backup quarterback, but his last name's a Manning, and he is bringing money into the school. So it's hard because not only is it about the athlete on the field, but the athlete off the field. If he's a cool, good-looking guy or he dates a celebrity, look at Travis Kelce, right? He's a good football player. He dates Taylor Swift. That brings in more money. So I'm just saying it's going to be a tough process.
I get it. So the one thing we know about is as we do subsequent episodes, we're going to be locking in on exactly how these rules are being interpreted by the NCAA and most importantly by the conferences. This brings us to the second topic, which has to do with the playoff structure, the college football playoff structure. Ironically, and interestingly enough, it hasn't been set in stone yet. And there are different models. So we're going to talk about a couple different models, and we're going to kick it around as to what we like or we don't like. I'm going to start off by saying there's a model that says that the 4 best teams in the SEC get automatic bids, auto bids. 4 best teams in the Big Ten get auto bids, and that you get a team from the Big 12 and a team from the ACC.
Yeah,
and you get 2 at-large bids. Now, the good thing about that is, in my view, this particular setup means that these regular season games will matter, and that ultimately there might be 2 automatic bids, but let's say they have a playoff to get in. Let's say 1 and 2 are set, but 3, 4, and 5 or 6, you have a playoff system there in the SEC, and you parallel that with the Big Ten. The simple fact is almost all the good players, unfortunately, and all the money is being stacked into these 2 conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC. So I think rather than just to pick, as they've been doing it, pick the best 10 teams in the nation, I think the idea of weighing it in, and particularly because these conferences have so much money and so much power, you don't want to exclude the Big 12 or the ACC. And ultimately, we're not going to go too far ahead of this year. There's discussion of subsequent years, but I think that's one way to do it. In pre-production, you discussed there's another possible way they could do it. Go ahead.
Yeah, Bruce, this is also interesting, and in my head, like I've pretty much favored your proposal, which is the Big Ten gets 4 teams and the SEC gets 4, and then the ACC and Big 12 they get 2 each.
2 each.
Now I
okay.
understand why the Big 12, specifically the Big 12. I like Brett Yormark, the commissioner there. I understand why he doesn't want to sign off on it. It's because you're basically signing and admitting that you're inferior. Okay, you're swallowing all your pride, and you're basically saying we're half as powerful as these 2 other leagues, even though these are competitors. This is a competitive business. Okay, the reason I kind of like that each conference gets a set number of teams in is because then it values the regular season. We get these play-in games like conference championships. I went to a conference championship last year, Oregon and Penn State. It was fun to watch it. Texas and Georgia. But now with the playoffs being so expanded, these conference championships, unfortunately, at the top have lost their luster. But I'm going to just say my last point. The Big 12 has a guy named Cody Campbell. He's a billionaire. He's funding money into Lubbock. The thing I do like about the Big 12, Bruce, is they say, hey, look, we can admit right now the SEC and the Big 10, they get all the draft picks. They really have all the power. And Arizona State was our only team that got in from the Big 12 last year, and they were kind of a Cinderella team. But they're looking towards the future, and what they see in the Big 12 is that they view Arizona State and they view Texas Tech and BYU. They think that they're going to become the next LSU, Alabamas. They think that they're going to become the next Clemsons of the sport. They think that they are the future, and they think that they can become the premier brands in the sport. That might be dream-worthy thinking, but that's kind of where they're at, and I can kind of respect that because that's something to shoot for, I guess. But, you know, it's interesting, I guess. It's a big risk because if you don't accept your 2 automatic bids in the future, you could be getting nobody in.
Well, one thing that happened last year was that actually there was no advantage to actually winning the championship. Obviously, we saw that play out with Penn State and Texas, and we also saw the weird buys that Boise State got and that ASU got, and we like ASU a lot. But I think there has to be a lot of thought in this. And the whole problem, Spencer, is that money is dictating everything. And right now, the Big Ten and the SEC are on the verge of shutting out everybody else or forcing them into conferences. Almost, I went to Lehigh, decades ago, and we had a Tier 2, and Lehigh won something called the Pioneer Bowl. Now, it's possible that we might face a time where the Big Ten and the SEC, that those conferences basically choke everybody else out just because of money and power. And everybody else will have to be involved in getting another trophy, maybe the equivalent of a D2. So right now it's certainly
I don't want to see that happen, but I believe that the group of 5, kind of like Josh Pate has said, and I scoffed at the idea a couple of years ago, but the group of 5 should maybe look to get their own championship. But I still think you still have Clemson, you still have Miami, you still have Notre Dame, and you still have Florida State. They are not in the SEC. I love Arizona State. I love Phoenix. I love what Kenny Dillingham is doing. There's a billionaire that's at Texas Tech, and Joey McGuire is building a powerful team. Keyshawn Henderson is the top-rated quarterback in 2026. He's going to Houston. Houston is a big market. So I still think that there's teams in the Big 12 and the ACC that can absolutely still compete on the upper echelon of the sport. I'd like to see the playoff maybe be 14 teams. I'm tired of expanding it. I'm tired of, the field being 16 and then it might go to 20. I don't need it. I'm more excited for this regular season and for these marquee matchups.
That's true. And there's a point to Josh Pate. He's really the North Star in college football. Everybody follows Pate U, and wonderful show. He makes a very good point. The fact that if you increase it, let's say to March Madness, there's 64 teams or more, just by merely expanding the number doesn't give other people a real chance to win the championship, because there's only really a handful of teams who are built a certain way with certain players that could even get through the grind of a playoffs. These are the big teams. These are the big teams, the Texases, the Georgias, the Alabamas. Boise State, Arizona State, they were never going to win the national championship. So you have to have the right number, whether it be 14 or 16. I certainly don't advocate anymore. But the thing is, you really have to have somebody, whether it be a group of people or whether you have somebody like Nick Saban become an omnipotent commissioner, where you have one guy who everybody respects, and Nick Saban would be the guy, in my view, who everybody listens to. And he helps, along with the commissioners of the various divisions, really guide things forward because things have become very chaotic. And in my view, the most important thing is that the games on Saturday mean something. That's what college football is about. It's about Saturday football. It's about the schedule mattering and even the conference championships mattering. And also the fact that teams and that the fan bases who've largely been lost by all this change, how a fan base could get to know the players on their team and they know there's some stability. Speak to that.
Yeah, like you can look at, John Mateer played at Washington State. These guys are like mercenaries. They only come in for 1 year and then they end up leaving. And I mean, there's even been some coaches that play in the MAC, the Mid-American Conference, and that's a fun league. It has Kent State. It has Central Michigan. It has, Eastern Michigan. It has Akron. They play on Tuesday and Wednesday nights, and that's always been a creative tradition. But now some of these coaches are dreading it because they're basically a minor league farm system. They're dreading having the whole nation watch these players because they know that if a running back goes for 140, somebody's going to direct message these guys, and it's basically becoming free agency. So that part of the sport is very, very difficult. I still think college football is a fun game. The NIL, I'm happy that these guys are getting life-changing money, that they're learning how to spend their money at an early age. They're learning how to save money. They're learning about taxes. They're learning about all sorts of valuable things when it comes to money. They're helping their families out. Some come from very poor backgrounds. So all of that I think is positive. What's really affected my viewing experience is the death of the Pac-12, so conference expansion. Also, there's no late football games now. They're all played like at noon. And I used to love watching Washington State and Mike Leach play against, UCLA, play against USC. So I do want to see regionality still exist, and it does in parts, and we really have to savor that. That's what is really critical, and I still think we have that. We just got to be careful with this conference expansion.
So to recap our show today, the first part of the show really deals with the idea of compensation, NIL, colleges paying student athletes directly, and also some of the recent Supreme Court decision, and we really don't know how that's going to be extrapolated on the college football landscape. And the second part of our show dealt with different scenarios of college football playoffs. We're going to be doing another show next week. This is Slaughterhouse Sports. If you enjoy this, tell your friends about us. We're focused on a lot of different things, but college football is really our central theme. We also will diverge into professional football and also basketball in the relevant times. So in any event, I want to thank everybody for logging into Slaughterhouse Sports and Rover Sports. For SportsDoc and Spencer G, I want to tell everybody, good night and good sports.